Hey guys, welcome to day 2 of the LEC. I want to break down this first game. I believe it's the first game of the day here between GiantX, which I believe was actually the merger between Giants Gaming and Excel, and I wasn't aware, and Team BDS. So there's a couple of new additions to their rosters that I'm not familiar with, specifically Jackie's. I believe this is a millionaire from EU Masters, so I don't have too much information on how he plays, but since this is a draft review, I wanted to just go over how teams are still prioritizing and shifting and understanding the flow of different champions, as there were some good picks here, but I wanted to note a couple of pivot points that allowed both teams to kind of understand that what things were missing from their comps, and they're recalibrating to certain things that haven't come up in a long time in drafting here. There's things like the Graves, it's back, but it's a very unique meta because I believe the last time Graves was actually like very prioritized was in 2020, and that was a meta where, let's say, the meta was a lot simpler back then. There's not that many different picks available, and we're still figuring things, what's available, what's banned, what options are gone. We need to react to these types of things, and it is on the coach to be able to realize and point this out to players, and then the players as a unit can help decide what is available, what looks good, and all of that stuff. And I think to start things off, these are some pretty good bans from both sides, honestly. There's an interesting heavy focus on jungle bans from GiantX here, and I think the takeaway is that I think a lot of blue side teams right now are heavily prioritizing banning all these junglers, because these are junglers that all basically cuck ADCs, and this allows GiantX to basically pick their ADC pick of the litter within the Kalista. What's adventurous about the Kalista pick here, in this case, is that there's a lot of ADCs still available. Like, the whole pool is still available. So in my eyes, the pick is not as important to... It's not as important to pick ADC and B1 just to take something that's extremely priority, although it is great to do so. It is more so to just kind of hide your pick, in a sense, for a lot of teams. But you could do that by not picking ADC. You could pick Lee Sin B1 here instead, and then allow BDS to just take the ADC they want, because there's so many of them available. Ashe, Varus, Lucian, Kalista, Aphelios, you can trade that matchup, even if some teams are willing to do Caitlyn matchups. The only one that's truly gone and that would change things is Draven. So a couple of these champions, like the Kalista, actually, ironically, would be a little bit stronger. So maybe it's on BDS that really cooked here. This is where things get interesting. This is the first Graves draft I've seen, and Graves has been pretty solid in this current Season 14 meta. However, unlike most junglers, the thing with most junglers and most metas, it's very simple in the sense that, oh, we're picking Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, Jarvan 4. All these champions are heavy facilitators, and even things like Wukong and Rek'Sai and Trundle, like, they all manage to have some level of setup, right? Graves is a very unique champion. While he provides so much power, he can't really do as good of a job as like setting up, and it's just a different champion. Like, it's a different type of game. So in that sense, if I'm GiantX here, right, they've got Ashe Varus bot lane, which is actually a pretty solid counter for Kalista here, because they just basically break her ankles the entire lane and she can't breathe. The solution here, as some teams have deciphered from their own analysis on these dual range bot laners, is you just pick engage here, and it's totally doable. It kind of makes the matchup a little bit better to play, although the all-in potential and the poke potential, it's a little bit of a fine line. However, another component that allows the viability of this to go up in this case is actually the fact that GiantX banned 3 engage champions. So I think it's pretty funny how BDS managed. I'm not sure if this was on purpose, but BDS managed to take great advantage of this. Moving on to the next bit of draft, they're just going to ban stuff that prevents the Ashe and Varus from succeeding, and GiantX are going to ban stuff for top side just to make sure it's not going to bleed out as much as possible, because it's already well established in this case when you have the Ashe Varus bot lane, and you most likely know that GiantX, they can't pick Renata here. It's completely unplayable, so it's just going to be an engaged champion bot lane. So BDS kind of know that. They should also know that BDS is not going to give resources to top side because they have Ashe Varus and they have Graves. So they're going to be playing through this bottom side I could see GiantX also deleting some strong mid laners that could provide pressure and could have a decent matchup into the Nico, because having strong mid in this game state is actually very powerful. And I'm not sure what teams have been trying, but there's going to be a lot of picks that can give problems for if you're allowed to supplement things like Graves or, you know, anything with setup. So like maybe, I believe it was Orianna here. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. So it's a very solid, just safe mid laner, and you set up for R5. Cassante is a very normal sort of blind here. Even in the Jax as well, it's pretty strong. GiantX would have to lock both picks anyway. Kalista Rel is pretty solid here in terms of like salvaging the B1. But I want you guys to pay attention to this Ashe Graves Varus 3-piece, because it's going to be fairly consequential in terms of how BDS's comp looks like in the end. It's a weird thing where your comp sounds really good until you lock all 5 champions, and then you're like, wait, something's wrong. And I'll get to that in a bit. On the side of GiantX, I think Nico is like considered a pretty safe blind. She's been pretty strong in this meta. She contributes really well to a lot of these fights. Lee Sin, excellent. Bro pulls up to every fight. Your will, my hands, you know? He's willing to throw those hands. And it's a very scrappy sort of team comp. And it's a great, out of any champion that would be good to kind of deal with this BDS comp, I really like Lee Sin here. It's pretty solid. And they round out with Cassante. Very standard, right? I think if GiantX don't, like I said, if GiantX don't give resources to Kalista Rel and try to stop this, they're just going to lose their tower. Kalista's going to be on welfare. It's not going to be playable. And we really don't want that. And of course, since the thing with this though is because we're drafting against BDS, the top lane matchups that you have to prepare for as a top laner against Adam is not going to be standard, right? Because you have the gods and you have like non-standard things. And there's a lot of things that can warp the way the game works against someone like Adam. If I was a normal player, I'd probably pick Gwen here. It looks pretty good here into Cassante. It's a pretty solid matchup, but because my name is Adam, we're not going to do that. We're going to pick Garen, and it's pretty good. I mean, like another one would be, in my eyes, I think Jax would be pretty solid here too, top lane into Cassante. There's a lot of things you could pick here. I'm going down the list. I'm trying to see what else is good. You probably want AP, but it's not necessary. Like Garen's solid. You could have gone. I think other picks I would have honestly maybe fared better. Jace would be good here, but Adam doesn't really play Jace. Even Yone, ironically, is like not bad if they wanted to play it like that. There's other champions that can be decent here. There's like Cassante. You know, he's one of those chances like cool blind, but there's ways to, you know, to cook around this. But with Adam, he's not that kind of player, so we're gonna lean into the gods, of course. Not sure if this is a good or a bad thing. In my eyes, it might have been a bit of a detriment, because now, what I talked about with the 5 champions being awkward, we have the Garen here. Like all the champions, you're like, wow, pretty solid matchups. Winning bot, winning top, mid. So I mean, it's blindable mid, really solid. We technically counterpicked, so you know we got as much pressure as we wanted to, and we have winning jungle. Wow, we can win the game. That's crazy. But look at the way BDS wanted to play these fights, and look at the way their comp is structured. There's actually not that much CC. But you might be wondering, watch, there's Varus Ashe, bro. They can just play pick, which is true. But outside of that, there really isn't much to, like, they can't command much in fights. Let's say they get an advantage, right? And they play for objective or something like that. Other than Garen, who's probably just going to be rage split pushing, there's not actually much they can kind of command space with. Because if you think of this 4 stack and Adam's going to just dumpster this Cassante on side lane most likely, then it looks like there's nobody that can walk in. There's no true frontliner. And the reason for this is that historical Graves metas, this is going to be some AD. That's not that important. This is going to be Nautilus or something like that, or Leona, right? And that's something where you don't have to worry too much about picking Graves early on. But now we're in a meta where it's not the same meta. We have Renata's picked a lot. We see, we see some Pyke. We see a lot of Milio. Like Bard even. Like, we have to think about what champions, what comp what options we're limiting ourselves when we have a champion like Graves, because these are both good. Don't get me wrong, these are great, decent priority. But I think if this was Xin Zhao, holy, you know, that'd be so much cleaner. And that champion's OP. That champion's broken. You know, there's other champions that could have done the job as well. I think even Viego is like pretty decent here, and it's not a bad champion as of right now. You know, there's things to consider that when you think about the way these teams flow, and I just wanted to point that out. And I think that's, although BDS's comp, it's like unfortunate because BDS's comp is super solid in terms of they have all the right things. They got winning matchups. They're gonna shit on everyone across the board. But at the end of the day, the comp can't really do much after winning for 15 minutes straight. I just think that's awkward. I'm gonna try to give an example. And maybe that was enough, but this game was like awfully close. You know what I'm saying? It's likely just because the matchup on boss fight was so bad, but the Kalista still got fed somehow. And I think with like a different champion in draft that could still shit on Lee Sin, could blow this game out of the water. But I digress. Pretty cool draft. Hopefully that was insightful to you guys. I'll see you in the next one.